musician. She's an amazing collaborator. She's a community builder. She co-founded Ohm Radio, and she manages the incredible alternative experience to Airbnb, Not So Hostile. A local community member, Vikki Matsis.
Thank you all so much for being here. I'm so honored to be speaking on this topic of inclusivity. Have y'all ever heard of a filter bubble? Anybody? Show of hands. Do you guys know what it is? A filter bubble is the idea that when you're searching for something online, you will only encounter information and opinions that reinforce your own beliefs. So the effect of a filter bubble is that you're not going to come in contact with information that could be valuable to you. So this is what a filter bubble looks like, a graphic representation. Information that challenges you, information that could inspire you, information that will push you out of your comfort zone, because that is where we grow. I've been thinking about inclusivity a lot, and in our ever increasingly isolated society, I've come up with an idea that inclusivity requires two key components. For a service to be inclusive, I think it needs to be affordable and accessible. So I loved Creative Mornings Charleston, their motto, everyone is creative and everyone is welcome. And the key, I think, one of their keys to their success is that it's free, it's affordable, and it's accessible, it's open to the community. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. That's me in the middle. I'm the youngest of three, and that's my older sister Eleni, my older brother Peter, and we're all first-generation American here. My father was born in Greece, in the island of Rhodes. Both my parents are Greek, and we moved around a lot growing up. You can see snow in the background here. I've lived in Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Florida, California, South Carolina, and spent some time living in Greece as well. So I landed here going to the College of Charleston, and I went to the College of Charleston with the help of a Pell Grant, and Pell Grants are for low-income families. I also applied to a lot of different scholarships, had a lot of loans, but it was available to me. It made it accessible, and I was able to come here from out of state. I won a scholarship to the National Outdoor Leadership School while I was in the College of Charleston, and this was a life-changing experience. And talking about a filter bubble, my family, no one in my family has ever been camping, and you can imagine, this was the first time I've ever been tent camping in my whole life. And so you can imagine their surprise, you know, when I showed up in Palmer, Alaska with my journal, writing down all my thoughts, my feelings, all my experiences, and had no idea how to set up a pole tent. You know, and this was a 30-day Alaskan wilderness expedition where we carried all of our food, all of our gear on our back. And yeah, that experience would have never come to me. The only reason it did come to me was because I was writing for the George Street Observer, and I got assigned an article about this, so I had to do some research on NOLS. And a course like this costs about $5,000 to $6,000. So when the NOLS bus came through campus, I saw it, and I was talking to the lady, and she said, "Would you like to do a NOLS course?" I said, "Yeah, it sounds incredible, but I don't have the finances. I can't afford it." So she said, "Well, we have a couple scholarships a year you can apply." And so I went for it, and I got one of these scholarships. And so this was a life-changing event. It became affordable and accessible to me. It included me. And for the first time in my life, I connected with nature for an entire month, and it changed the course of my life. We did just the wildest things out there. Learned leave no trace principles, learned about sustainability, learned how to work as a team and be a leader. So in this kind of experience, your guide, your teacher, will let you walk a mile in the wrong direction before they tell you, "Hey, you're going the wrong way." And you've led your team a mile in the wrong direction, and now we have 8 more miles to go in the opposite direction. So it was an incredible learning experience, and as a result of this experience, this was my sophomore year in college, the next year I took some time off from the College of Charleston, i.e. I dropped out, and I went out to California and studied permaculture and organic agriculture and slept on the floor of the greenhouse where we're growing all of our food, and learned about grant writing because I realized grant writing is so important. Grant writing, scholarships, these were the ways that I was going to be able to be included and have these experiences that would be life-changing. But eventually, I did make it back to the college, and I graduated from the College of Charleston and stumbled into this experience of being able to manage the Not So Hostel. So the Not So Hostel, I've been there for 12 years. We host over 10,000 visitors a year. So I've hosted around 120,000 visitors and backpackers in my time there. We are the only hostel in the state of South Carolina, which is really incredible because travel is one of those experiences that changes people, and it has to include everybody. And so it's accessible, it's right downtown, and it's affordable. For $28 a night, someone can stay downtown and experience the city and the history and everything that we have to offer. So the hostel is a place where cultures collide, where languages and spices and songs and music and experiences, ideas and perspective, they all come together. So all these people, they probably didn't know each other when they came, and here they are able, what the hostel does is provides a space for that to happen. And that's what we need, I think, more in our society. Like Yvonne was saying, if you're having an event or something, to think about who's not included. We need to have these spaces where everyone is included. So we provide this platform, this space where everyone is welcome and everyone belongs, even this guy on the right. And here at the table is where those conversations happen, because where do we have those difficult conversations anymore? Where do we talk about those things? Especially during campaign season, where the Bernie Sanders campaign worker and the Trump campaign worker, they have to learn to coexist. They have to learn to live in community together. They're sleeping in a dorm room together. So what they find out, the more time they spend together, and the more they sit here and they have our oatmeal and coffee for breakfast every morning, the more they realize is that they're more alike than they are different. And we all know that, right? We know that, but we forget. And so traveling and spending time with different people of different cultures, it helps to remind you of that. Because everybody wants the same thing, right? Everybody wants to be accepted. Everybody wants to be heard. Everyone wants to have these incredible life-changing experiences. Everybody wants to be included. Everybody wants to be loved. It's a great place for your bubble to be popped. The hostel, or if the hostel's not your thing while you're traveling, just traveling and having those new experiences. So I think there's two ways to overcome this filter bubble, right? One of them is having those face-to-face interactions and to travel, having those new experiences come into your life, and also is to interact with information you normally wouldn't interact with. So how do you do that, especially when you're spending most of your time online? Well, that's where the radio comes in. The radio is such an amazing medium, and my work in the community as a volunteer is with Ohm Radio. And Ohm Radio, for those of you that never heard, it's a listener-supported, nonprofit, non-commercial local radio station. We play local music. We encourage civic engagement. We are at the dial at 96.3 FM and streaming online and on a free mobile app. But the radio in general as a medium is the most inclusive medium that we have today. 5.5 billion people listen to the radio. That's over 70% of the entire world. A radio along with mobile phones, not talking about like a smartphone, just a regular mobile phone, is the most inclusive, most accessible, most affordable medium that we have. And the radio is one of those ways that you can interact with information that you normally wouldn't come in contact with, because the radio doesn't care about your preferences. The radio is not trying to predict what you're going to want to see next or search for next. And this is the statistics for just the US. If you think about the global population, the US accounts for just 4.8% of that. That's just such a tiny slice. But since we're here, we live here, this is our experience, this is where we're most grounded and rooted. Radio here reaches 93% of all adults. These statistics are for age 12 and up, more than TV, more than smartphones, PCs, or tablet. The reason is because it's affordable and accessible. The radio, just like traveling, allows for people of different backgrounds to interact. More than that, it allows for people of different educational backgrounds to interact. So whether you're illiterate, you can't read or write, or you're college educated or beyond, you're both able to learn from the radio in the same way. You can both be connected to your community in the same way, and you can both call into the radio and have your voice represented and your point of view heard. So there's two types of radio. There is community radio and there is commercial radio. And can you guess which is which? This is our first one over here, but this is what we're hoping for next. So there we are on top of Joseph Floyd Manor, putting up our antenna. And so radio is, in some ways, in the past 100 years, it hasn't changed in the fact that it's still incredibly relevant and hasn't had the decline of usership like print media has. But in other ways, the radio has changed drastically, because now with the Telecommunications Act of 1996, all of our media became deregulated. So it's a different media landscape than when we were all born now than it was. And so we have now what's called the illusion of choice, which I think is such a beautiful way to describe it. If you're flipping through the radio station or even the TV station, you think that they're owned all by different people, but they're not. It's a beautiful illusion. Over 90% of what we read, watch, and listen to is owned by 6 media giants. And so it used to be that there were very specific rules on media ownership, that you could own a few newspapers, a few television stations, and a few radio stations. And I mean like 3 or 4. Very few, so that only one person could control a small part of the population. And it was intentionally designed that way in the 1930s so that media ownership could be diverse, because they knew how important that was. They understood that it was important to have different points of view, different types of people owning the media. But that has since changed, so that we have a few hundred media executives controlling the information diet of millions of Americans. And this is why when you're driving through California or Oklahoma or Georgia, you hear the same songs. And so what's happening now is that there's transmitter stations all over, so that they're playing 80% of all stations in the United States. They have the same playlists. Haven't y'all ever experienced that? It's like, why are they still playing that song? Yeah, this is wild. 32 years of nonstop play. And this person over here, right, they're not listening to any music, they're not being exposed to any new ideas, they're not hearing any new artists, they're not being challenged, they're not growing. So I learned this and everything else I know about media reform from this beautiful woman here, Dr. Faye Stoyer. And she taught a class at the College of Charleston that also changed my life. And she is the founder of Media Reform South Carolina. I get way too much credit for it, but she is the one that started it all. And she always loved the saying that never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing it has. It really is true. She invited people over to her dining room table, and we would talk about media issues, and we've been doing that since 2010. We would talk about net neutrality and covert consolidation, and how rural areas don't have access to broadband, and how the information is not coming to people in the same way. So I applied for a scholarship my senior year to go to the National Conference for Media Reform. And the National Conference also had a work exchange program so that I could afford the ticket to go. So I was included. And as a result, we learned about the historic once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to apply for an FM radio station. So this is me, and this is Dr. Stoyer, and I love this. Picture so much, because at the time we didn't have any idea about what was going to happen here. So many years later, we were just so inspired that people were thinking about this and talking about this, and thinking about how can we make the media more inclusive. And so this was our solution to that, because we're not going to ever go back to the way it was. We're not going to go back to having hundreds and thousands of different media owners with those small media ownership limits. It is what it is. But now this is our solution. So about 2,000 low-power FM radio stations all across the country got this opportunity to connect with their community. And so Media Reform South Carolina is the nonprofit that brings Ohm Radio to Charleston. So it's community radio by the people of Charleston for the people of Charleston. It's the only thing like this that we have here. Last year we had 97.5 closed down, our only other community radio station broadcasting out of the Charleston Public Library. So this is our chance, Ohm Radio, to allow people to have this platform in the same way that Creative Mornings host this space. They offer this space for things to happen. The same way the hostel offers this space for people to come and interact. The radio is a platform, and it doesn't work without the help of the community. It's a platform that represents what's happening in our community, and we can only do it when people step up and share their voice and their story and their music. So we have over 40 local DJs that contribute weekly content. Our 3.5 mile radius, it's incredibly local community radio. And these are some old numbers, so we think it's really more close to like 250,000 people that we reach. And we have 84 hours a week that Ohm Radio plays of original content. I don't know if we've completely deleted Mrs. Robinson from our music library, but we should. So it's an interesting history with Ohm Radio, because about this time last year, it looked like we were also going to have to close our doors. We had a few $1,000s left. We've always been a small, scrappy organization. And we always had the key component of affordability. It's always been free. We don't have any memberships. And although we do a pledge drive from time to time, it's not that annoying. Because we are completely listener supported. But so it was always free. Anybody that comes up, we have an audio engineer. They record, edit, archive all of the content, and also part of our mission is to teach everybody how to do that. Teach men and women and children. We have lots of school groups that come through to have those skills, because it's not out of reach to become a broadcaster. But even so, we just weren't making it. And so what I realize now, thinking about this talk and inclusivity, we had the affordability, but we didn't have the accessibility. And so the idea that I really want to leave with you today is that to think about those things, and that they can make you more successful. If you have those key components, affordability and accessibility, then it can lead to being more successful. So we moved to a new location in last October. And it's another thing about the radio is that you never know who's listening. So the people over at Workshop, Pacific Box and Crate, and Menzos, they were listening, and they heard what we were trying to do. They understood our vision and where we were trying to go. And so we have this beautiful new studio here in the Workshop. And ever since we've been there, our programming has tripled. We have so many more people coming into our doors, sharing their stories. I see some DJs here from Ohm Radio that come on the air every week, and they share their story because it's important. It's a very inclusive community. People often take me out to lunch, right? A really nice lunch. They talk for an hour, and then they pitch me their radio idea. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not the one. You know, thank you for lunch, but I'm not the one that decides. So please, if you're thinking about doing that, just skip that step altogether. If it's in line with our mission and values, then it's included. If it's secular, egalitarian, truth-seeking, we're nonpartisan. If your idea, what you want to do falls in those lines, then you can be on the radio. You can have your voice be part of the airwaves, because the airwaves do belong to the people. They are a public utility. And so, unlike other public utilities, this is one that you can influence. And we have these incredible shows coming up. This is one of our newest ones, Tales from the Manor, documenting the oral histories of people in Joseph Floyd Manor and all the changes they've seen in Charleston over the past several decades. We have all types of music. We play entire albums, front to back, artist interviews. 9 to 5 magazine, they come and do a podcast. They bring in local musician every week and they do a live in-studio performance. Everything from hip-hop, poetry, reggae, and anything else. So, ways to be more inclusive. If you offer a service, a lot of you here are graphic designers or photographers or in the arts, perhaps consider offering a scholarship or a giveaway or something along the lines so that somebody could experience what you have to offer that normally wouldn't, because it's life-changing, as it has been for me. So even with Ohm Radio, for example, like Marcus Amaker, a graphic designer, he's such an incredible graphic designer, and he has donated so much time and talent because he's believed in our mission, and we wouldn't be where we are today, I believe, without his help. And the same thing with photographers, all these people that have come together to donate to make it what it is. So if you have a service, consider offering it to a nonprofit or to a different group that you might normally interact with. Oh, I'm getting some snaps, thanks, man. So be aware of your filter bubble and ways to overcome it. And these are some of the ways I've just suggested today. To travel, maybe try staying in a hostel, but if that's not your thing, having those face-to-face interactions with people from a totally different perspective. I was checking somebody in this week from Australia, and she was saying how she has to vote. She has to send in her vote because they have compulsory voting in Australia. They have a 96% rate of people that participate in their elections, and she assumed that everywhere else was like that. And so she was shocked to hear that, more people vote on American Idol in the US than they do in our general elections. So it's just incredible to have that new information come in to expand your horizons and your perspective. And also to tune into local radio. I encourage you to try Ohm Radio if you haven't, but more importantly, when you're traveling, to tune in to that local community radio station if they have one. Because a community radio station should be like a mirror, reflecting what's happening in the community, the voices of the community, that music of that community. So while you're traveling, you can instantly be connected to that place. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.